Hey everyone, have you ever wondered what sets successful people apart? Well, arguably it's their ability to deliver exceptional work consistently. So join me in this video as I run through the 5 key steps to mastering your tasks, improving your focus, and consistently delivering high quality work. So let's get into it. So step 1 is understanding the requirements. You're not going to be able to do high quality work unless you know exactly what it is that you're required to do. Sometimes this is super easy at work because you are given kind of a set of instructions or a spec from your boss potentially, but it's just really important to get that clear and make sure that it's a two-way process as well. So you're asking lots of questions to make sure you know exactly what's required of you. You're not going to be able to deliver high quality work, or it's not going to be high quality work if it's not directly linked to the spec you're given. So make sure you ask those questions. In the Startup of You book by Reid Hoffman, he talks about market realities. So this is the sense that there's no point in delivering exceptional work if there's no market for it, because then arguably it's not exceptional, or maybe it's just like art or something which will take forever to be recognized. So make sure you do your research up front and spec out your requirements. And then point number 2 is about making sure that you can deliver against those requirements, and part of this is about cultivating what you know to be your true strengths. Given any one task, maybe different people approach it differently, and I think the more kind of less well-defined the task is, the less likely it is that people would approach it in a certain way. So Robert Greene talks about this a lot in his book Mastery. Definitely the first part is all about understanding like your innate gift and talent and what you have to give to the world. So I think it's really important to do that work up front as well, because otherwise you're not going to be able to capitalize on that strength, double down on your kind of key USP and incorporate that into the work. So I think it's really important to understand what you're able to give and deliver to that work and making sure you make that evident. And then point number 3 is making sure that you're cultivating that continuous learning and that continuous research mindset, which will enable you to draw upon a really broad spectrum of inputs when you're looking to produce the output. If you've got a very narrow set of inputs, then you're going to get by definition almost a very narrow set of outcomes. So it's really important to always put in the groundwork and always be looking at how you can kind of broaden the range of sources that you're going to be using to create that piece of work. So get inspiration anywhere, read books, podcasts, I talk about this all the time, get mentors, and sometimes do like the left field thing and draw upon some parallel path that you've been taking, something that might not be directly relevant to the task at hand. Make sure you just have all these wonderful inputs that you can funnel into your output, and that's something you could do kind of frequently and regularly, I'd say. Yeah, there's a really good kind of story I've heard about, which is kind of bees in the hive whose job it is just to fly around randomly, land upon some new flowers that the hive can then use to create honey. And in Kevin Kelly's book, Excellent Advice for Living, he talks about you should spend 2/3 of your time on focusing on your task at hand, and then maybe 1/3 of your time just exploring and being that bee that flies around looking for random flowers, or not even necessarily looking, but just flying around to try and find something that's out of the ordinary. And then point number 4 is where this really hits the road, and it's where you put in deliberate practice. Everyone knows that if you're looking to master a task and deliver high quality work, that regular practice is what's needed. In Malcolm Gladwell's book Outliers, he talks about the 10,000 hours it's required to master any kind of task, and I think that's an interesting concept in the world of work because there's lots of different tasks you can do, but I definitely feel like the more kind of maybe piecemeal tasks you do, the better you get at producing results. So that's the kind of scale we're looking for here. As well as doing it frequently, it's about doing it deliberately and pushing in a direction that moves you just outside your comfort zone. This takes me to the point which you might have heard a lot about before, which is the aim is to get yourself into a position of flow. I think I've experienced a few times. It's really hard to describe it. It's basically where kind of time melts away and you're completely engrossed in a task. It's where you're acting at your absolute best. And the steps I've actually detailed leading up to this point have been designed to be able to get you into that point of flow. So the first kind of 2 points are about making sure that the task is well defined, both externally and then internally. So what other people expect of you and then what you're able to do. Because one of the conditions for getting into flow state is basically having a task that's relatively well defined. Well, the third step I spoke about earlier is about making sure you've got a wide range of kind of experience and knowledge to draw upon when you're actually executing the task. So yeah, the aim is to get yourself into flow state. There's been so much written about flow state. I think it was popularized in Cal Newport's book Deep Work, but there was a book actually from the 90s which talks about it. It sounds kind of intangible and maybe a bit fluffy, but if you've experienced it, then you definitely know that there's something to it. But essentially you have to get yourself into a position of extreme focus, and there's lots of kind of techniques out there you can use but essentially you need to make sure you've got no distractions, so tone down any kind of notifications that you might get on your work computer, maybe building a routine around starting to get into flow state. So that might be a particular song you listen to, it might be background music, or it might be a certain lighting, but there's lots of signals that show that doing a routine can really help you get into flow state. And it reminds me of Johnny Wilkinson every time he used to get ready to go and do his kick at goal on the rugby pitch, whereas he used to do that little routine which used to get himself into the mindset and into the kind of flow state position for him to be able to kick as well as he did. So there's something to that. It can be really difficult in the office. I think working from home is a bit of a blessing there, and it's a lot easier to cultivate, I guess, a quiet kind of distractionless environment here at home. The way I kind of dealt with it when I was at work was I used to start something really early in the day, so before everyone else got going, or do it late into the night, or you can even just block out an hour in a meeting room and just go and focus in kind of a meeting room in the office without any distractions if it's the kind of noise and chatter around the desk that's really getting to you. One of the other techniques I use to get into kind of a flow state is putting an arbitrary deadline. So I've got this like timer here, like a Pomodoro timer, but a digital one, and putting kind of time constraints really like adds a bit of kind of extra focus on delivering the work, because otherwise I think it's quite tempting to just let tasks spill over into the rest of the day. And if it's something that actually only can take an hour or so, you could be tempted to spend a whole day on it by just kind of doing bits here and there and being distracted all day. So putting a time constraint on it really helps. I think I found that by accident again. I had a really strict deadline last year and was asked to produce a presentation within an hour or so. Definitely found myself getting to flow state at that point. It enabled me to really kind of focus in and deliver actually quite a high quality result. And I actually surprised myself with how high quality I could deliver within an hour because of those constraints. So it was very clear what I needed to do. I believed in myself to be able to do it. I had no distractions at that point. I just had to focus on it for the next hour. So yeah, really valuable. Another thing to think about here is how hard it is, the kind of work environment of instant responses to everything. So like Carl Newport talks about this quite a lot in his book about how we were in this kind of world of instant messaging, instant emails, and you're kind of expected to respond to those almost instantly. So if you find yourself in that kind of environment, which I definitely have, it's important to recognize that you can take regular breaks from your flow state every hour to an hour and a half, and that can enable you to meet those requirements, go through your emails quickly, make sure you're not missing anything important. But maybe people can get to the state where they work from home, they work on their own, but they can get to the state where they can just focus all morning. But that's definitely not where I'm at the moment. Then the final step is to experiment and iterate. So you almost definitely don't produce like the incredible piece of work straight up. While you've pushed yourself beyond your like comfort zone and definitely kind of improved, I think it's important to recognize that it might not be completely perfect straight out of the box. What defines perfection or like, an exceptional piece of work? You can define it internally or externally. I'd say some combination of both is quite good, but regardless, it's really important to get that external feedback or just let the piece of work sit and then have a go again the next day. The iterative process is really important, and this is something that became very kind of popular in Silicon Valley. Elon Musk is famous for saying, if you do it fast, you can test it fast, and then if it fails, you can fix it fast. So it's that point of just iterating quickly. That was something that really stuck out to me as well. And by iterate, I mean just practice this regularly as well. So make sure that you don't just do this once, it's about doing it very frequently. As with all kind of things that are repeated, like a habit, you get better at it, it becomes easier, it becomes kind of habitual that you get into that flow state and produce really focused work and detailed work. Anyway, that was my video on delivering exceptional work and improving your focus. If you enjoyed that video, don't forget to check out this one over here from me.